was the snapshot of Overwatch because we saw all the best teams playing against each other, and the result was Envyus winning all of it. Speaking of ONOG, which is the other tournament that we had this weekend, and this was like a month-long tournament too, where they had the group stages like on different weekends, and then culminated to this finals. We had Envy just not losing a single match during this entire, this whole weekend, and beating C9 in the end 3-0. But I think I'm trying to figure out what other matches might have been interesting to talk about. LG did fall to Rogue, which I think surprised a lot of people because LG looked so good in the OG Invitational, and those were close games, but they did fall to Rogue, and then Rogue fell to C9 pretty handily, which surprised me too.
Yeah,
so
that I think is the most interesting part.
Yeah.
Like, they were not present against C9 at all. You watch that. To be fair, it was like 2 a.m. for them, but they've done this before, right? But when watching Gibraltar as well, getting stopped before the hangar gates, was just...
That's rough.
Yeah,
they were
crazy.
Completely stopped in their tracks there as well. So I don't know. I really don't know. It seemed like a little bit different for them as well. I mean, those guys are still obviously working on consistency as much as anyone else is, although they maybe had more than most for quite some time. But yeah, it's a shame to see them go and do that to Luminosity, which, by the way, they held Luminosity on the first point on Dorado, right? So they were on form, even though they actually only got the first point. Dorado was actually a really close match between those two, as neither team actually got very far. And they only won Hollywood by 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
I think Luminosity got all the points. They got to the end. It was 9 minutes 11. Rogue did it in 9:09. So it looks like a 2-0. It looks like a less close result than it is until you look at it. But again, to go from that and then just to fall apart against C9 makes me a bit quizzical, definitely.
I think this goes back to basically what you were saying earlier too, Mitch, where NG Red took over C9 the payload maps and they lost the King of the Hill, and I just feel like, also going off my point earlier, that coaches are just really needed, because we saw LG barely lose to them, but at the same time we saw NG Red lose them 2-1. And then, a day later, or whatever it was, I think it was literally a day later, LG beat C9, who beat Rogue. So we have these different rock, paper, scissors matchups between the teams. Right. They're all beating each other, but they're not, they're not at the envious level. And I think that just comes down to the support and, knowing how to play against a certain team or how to eliminate their threats.
Yeah. It also comes down to just being versatile too, and we talked about this a little bit last week. I just feel like Envyus has a roster of players that, for the most part, can play anything, and we do see them switching roles like quite a bit, mid maps switching roles, and that just allows you to create scenarios or counter scenarios that are just going to give you more, just a higher probability of winning. And I feel like that's the biggest thing with Envyus right now. They just have a very versatile roster. It's wrapping up ONOG. Any other things to really point out? I mean, kudos again to the ONOG team and Derek, and also VGVN for sponsoring this event, and really pushing the visa issue in front of a lot of esports folks, or esports viewers and fans. It's a huge issue that we do just need more attention on, and I think 100,000 people might have signed the petition. I forget what the exact number is, but it was definitely something impressive just with the whole visa petition recently. So kudos to them for bringing this, just to everybody, just to the forefront for a lot of folks in the Overwatch space. But yeah, any notable MVP just player, just Envyus the team again, I guess. Because,
I don't know. Notable stuff for me was like the last day was like stomps, right? It was just 3-0s, 3-0s, 3-0s. And obviously Envyus were the orchestrators of 2 out of 3 of those 3-0s there. Yeah. But I think one thing to notice is that they are a long way ahead. And what I think is so interesting now, we just talked before about NG Red, how, Huck, you said 2 weeks ago, they were not even on the same level. And now look at them, right? And then you see the gap between the top team and the other teams below them is actually potentially quite big. But how long does it really take to actually bridge that gap is the question when we see what NG Red can do. So I just think it's super interesting. And I think it's healthy. I think it's good that there's a team that is setting an incredibly high standard and a cracking pace forward in terms of esports here. I'm more than happy to see Envy keep dominating, as much as it's a boring storyline, because people have something to aspire to. They're just normal people like everyone else. Tvik maybe not so normal, but the rest of them. So it's just about putting in the time.
Yeah, and of course you can't forget that Cloud9, they've had this rough patch where they weren't able to practice a ton. Same situation for Reunited as Too Easy. Just went through his final paper in university. So I guess he's done with university now. So I would expect to see a comeback of Reunited. Rogue, they're underperforming right now, frankly. When the first tournament that they played in, they beat Reunited. They played so well. So I'm expecting all of these teams to gain ground over time, and I certainly would expect to see that happen with the. We've got so much going on. We've got all the ESL qualifiers coming into place, which is going to be new rule sets, like competitive mode. Like, Envyus is dominant for literally the last 2 weeks. So we'll see if that, there's still plenty of time for that to change up.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see a lot of teams catch up, and you're right, totally right. Seeing NG Red more or less like explode into prominence in such a short amount of time is kind of proof of that.
Yeah, and maybe one of the things that we were talking about with meta, right, being one of the factors as to certain teams rising or certain teams falling. And one of the things that's most obvious is that the prominence of Pharah lately. I think Pharah play has been a huge reason for whether a team beats another team. So why don't we talk about that, like Pharah? So why is Pharah all of a sudden just becoming just the the DPS character to play right now?
Because McCree and Widow suck a lot more now. So
simple answer.
That is the most simple answer. Yeah. I think it's going to balance out a little bit more given time. I mean, we saw Gods at the Josh OG event do really well. It's just a more question of what is going to be able to adapt. You always have these Widows that can get a pick or two, but then the other opposite team, they basically just hide behind line of sight, and then that Widow is almost just not a character that's going to be able to
just
fight.
Go Winston,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true.
But and it's easily countered, so you can get that those quick picks, but unless you can push off those quick picks and actually take ground in any way, it kind of just goes right out the window. And when Widow and McCree aren't used as much, then it's just going to be Pharah for days because it's too much damage. There's too much playmaking ability off that ult. Yeah. Also, the concussion grenade. Height is such an important thing. Yeah. In almost every map, and Pharah is great at displacing that.
Yeah, I think additionally as well, we talk about obviously with the nerfs of McCree and Widowmaker as well, that actually has direct impacts on teams that we've seen use them as a crutch before or use them extensively. Cloud9, we see them now as well. Who is it Shaw for? Is it Reaver on Hitscanner? Who's playing Pharah? Or they're still readjusting? And Reunite is an excellent example of this. Who does Value play? McCree. Who does Too Easy play? Widowmaker. Right? And they do have an excellent Pharah player in Unfixed, but he was often sort of flexing a lot through those. It wasn't like we need a staple Pharah. So their roles are also being changed as well. But we talk about the rise of Pharah, and also we did see in the last few weeks Junkrat be prolific for defending on hybrid maps. Now he's not so great because with Pharah being so prolific and good Pharah players being able to shut him down, which is most often the best counter to a Junkrat, you see maps like Hollywood, great Pharahs on attacking side will boost up over the roof and just nail the Junkrat with 2 rockets, and then you're in. Your Reinhardt is free to move through the underpass without being harassed.
Yeah.
You're totally right. That's a great point that the prominence of Pharah kind of makes Junkrat less popular. But we've seen this happen so many times in the competitive meta. First it was Tracer and Genji were too strong. Then everyone started picking McCree to counter them. Then no one was picking Tracer at all because McCrees were just dominating them. Now, it's just this kind of moving back and forth slowly as people react to the new meta, the new flavor of the week or month or whatever. So that's always interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think across all esports, it's about, as a player, as a pro player, you got to stay ahead of that cycle. If you're dragging behind and you're on that slower timeline, you're going to lose games. And that's what C9 is doing now, where on the other side, teams like Envyus, they're ahead of that cycle. And it's important to always stay ahead of the meta and be one step ahead.
Yeah. So another trend that we saw was something that pertains to a trend that we were seeing maybe a week ago, which was 76 kind of being the default McCree replacement, after the nerf. But now we're seeing Roadhog also. So I kind of want to talk about both 76 and Roadhog, but Roadhog's literally in every single map at this point. I mean, we're playing at least double, triple tanks, with Roadhog actually being a DPS character. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that and how that's changed, even just in the last week. Mitch, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, the core of it is the concept of the one shot, right? The concept of the one hit kill combo, right? Which McCree was quite effective at. Obviously, arguably far too effective. I think like over 900 damage burst or something like that. So Roadhog fills that role fairly well. Hook in, left click and melee to the face, and you can eliminate those 150 to 200 health champs heroes pretty quickly. He's robust, a lot of health. He has a self heal. He can look after himself. Obviously, his ultimate has great utility, and if you combine it with a Zarya ult, it's pretty disgusting. So we do see this sometimes. Everyone is saying like, like Roadhog is almost a new McCree in this kind of way because he is a tank in his own right, can output a ridiculous amount of damage. And you'll see it in your pub games or whatever. If your Roadhog doesn't have a silver medal, he's not playing well, at least.
That's good point.
Yeah, that self heal is just so good. It's on such a short cooldown timer too that Roadhog, if played correctly with a Mercy backing him up, probably with Zarya's bubbling him too, just has so much survivability. It's pretty nasty. But also 76. We mentioned, I guess you mentioned last week as well, that he's really taken over McCree's position. He actually had an 80% pick rate, or just a hair under 80% pick rate in the tournaments this weekend.
It's crazy.
Damn.
Crazy.
That's just nuts.
Because he's the best hit scan. He's the best hit scan
right.
hero available right now. And he deals with Pharah's mercies and stuff better than McCree's and Widows can.
Right, exactly. Like our previous point. Probably because Pharah is so prominent right now, is we're seeing even more 76 than we would otherwise, right?
Yeah, I reckon so.
Yeah. Huck, did you have anything to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, these guys did a great job of covering why they're both very popular, but I think it's in a more interesting dynamic because I want to see, like everybody probably considers the last patch as like the McCree Widowmaker patch, and this is more the Roadhog patch, even Soldier 76. But I think it's taking a little bit longer for teams to figure out where the meta lies, because even with those two characters, we're starting to see a lot more Reaper, where we didn't see Reaper so much in the last patch. And I still think, as I said, that it still needs to develop, but I think it's a more complex dynamic already, which is what makes the game interesting. Instead of just having the, McCree, no matter what, always 24/7, as many of them as we can.
So we saw, it was surprising with just the entire weekend, just if you were to take a look at just all the picks, we pretty much saw every character picked at some point. But there was one character that was not selected at all, which was Zenyatta. And that's pretty telling.
The update just hit. Sorry.
Oh, the update just hit?
Apparently.
Oh gosh, of course. It always hits literally right after our show, so we have to wait a week to talk about it. It's so funny. But anyways, yeah, so Zenyatta, I figure this is like a big discussion actually in the subreddit too. I think it's pretty telling whenever a character is just not chosen even in some obscure situation on one of the maps. And that's what we're seeing with Zenyatta. So, is it time to do something with Zenyatta in terms of buffing, whether it's mobility, make him a little faster, or just redesigning him a little bit, because Discord's just so freaking strong that that you just have to keep him weak in a lot of ways too. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Huck, you have any thoughts? I'll have you start off actually. Since... Oh, muted. Oh, don't hear you. Don't hear you. Uh-oh. Let me see. Go to Fishstix. Why don't you start off first?
Yeah, so we've had this conversation, I think, as early as like the first shows that I was on with you guys, and especially after Lucio got nerfed and all that. I've always been a fan of DPS characters that can still frag. So in a certain way, I'm not a super high level player, unfortunately. I wish I had more time to play the game, but I really wonder, would Zenyatta be too OP if he just had 200 HP like every other support does?
Yeah.
I love that idea. I mean, Zenyatta would get picked like crazy if he had the 200 HP, I think. He would fit into so many compositions as a high damage, high impact support character that still can, Transcendence, still a very powerful ability. Discord, as you mentioned, still very, very powerful. Harmony, it got buffed a little bit, so it actually heals enough. Would he be too OP? Maybe. I'm not sure. But I actually like the concept of having some support characters that can frag a little bit better. Maybe their healing isn't quite as good as a Mercy or a Lucio, but they can actually frag. I'd like to see it. Another thing that everyone always talks about with Zenyatta is his lack of movement abilities. So he has really no way to escape from something like a Tracer or Genji in the back lines. So you could buff his movement in some way. I think that would be neat as well. I'm also always in favor of additional movement abilities. But yeah, I would be interested just to see what it's like with a 200 HP Zenyatta. Does that make him way too OP? Do we start seeing multiple Zenyatta? Well, I guess not with
the
one
meta would
limit,
be
but yeah.
The meta would be pretty crazy if Zenyatta entered the space, because then these Roadhogs would just be melted. Discord would just counters Roadhog.
Again, right?
Exactly.
Zenyatta.
Then we're back to McCreeps and Widow again. But Widows can't kill them as well anymore, right? So
exactly, and for that reason, we may see a small resurgence in Zenyatta as well. And I like that Ben touched on the idea of his health pool or how much he has. I actually wouldn't mind turning the attention to how it works, because if you bear in mind, he's got 50 health and 100 shield or however much it is. So Zenyatta is a hero currently that needs to dip in and out of fights because he needs some time of not taking any damage to recharge his shield to get back in. The problem is fights are prolonged. We're not skirmishing in Overwatch right now. We are running at each other full pelt, belting each other until we die, getting rezzed and doing it all over again. So the whole paradigm behind how Zenyatta's health pool works in general, or his survivability, it's actually incongruent with the way we're playing Overwatch right now as well. He needs to be in and out of the fight, sort of in the back lines and then getting safe and getting that shield back. I mean, it's incredibly strong that he can, take 100 damage and come back at full health or as much as he started with here. But, the way that works probably needs a bit of a look in, because there's a way of playing Overwatch right now, and Zenyatta kind of doesn't lend himself to being optimal in a lot of these situations. And I think his low health pool is a result of that. He can't really hang around in the fights.
All right, see if Chris is back here. Oh, say something?
Test.
There you go. Okay, you're back.
Yay.
All right.
I have no idea, guys. My apologies.
It's okay.
So what was the TLDR on Zenyatta? She sucks, and how do we buff?
So Ben suggested more hit points.
I like that idea.
Okay. And mobility is obviously something that we can think about changing. But another point was just that the meta would change so drastically if Zenyatta was in it.
I don't know. It's a weird hero to balance. I don't think there's the simple fix, and I think it's going to take a while to get it into a place where it's used. But a hero that's never used is a problem. A hero that is rarely used isn't a problem. So they need to just give it a little bit of a buff somewhere. It's also a hero that's easily hit. I don't know. I always, whenever I see Zenyatta, I'm just like, I want to fucking kill that balloon. That's what it looks like. It's like a pinata to me. Like, I just want to hit it with the stick. So, something needs to be fixed with it.
His hit radius seems to be bigger than his actual body is, which is kind of funny. It's weird sometimes. What do you guys think about just, I feel like Discord's the main issue with Zenyatta. It's such a powerful thing, and obviously the Harmony Orb is great too as a heal. What if all that stuff stayed the same, and we maybe upped his hit points too, and we just made his damage less? I wonder if that would be enough.
That would make him a lot more similar to the other support characters. I like having different support characters, though. I don't know.
I love his offensive ability. Don't get me wrong. That's like one of the most fun things about Zenyatta. But I just feel like it's something that's going to be so hard to balance if you just don't veer to one side, and having him like so powerful, like hybrid wise. But yeah, it'll be nice to see him something change about him, because I don't think Overwatch is in a good spot if out of the first 21 characters, like there's one character that just is absolutely not played ever. That's kind of strange. Eventually we will have characters that won't be played, but I feel like right now it's a little bit surprising.
I mean, if you go all the way back to the old double Genji, double Zenyatta meta, why did that work? It was because the orbs lasted forever. You didn't have to have any line of sight at all. Mm-hmm. That alone was enough to make Zenyatta extremely good in the meta back then. So another thing that we didn't touch on is and a lot of people suggested when they first nerfed him, is maybe 5 seconds or 6 seconds before the orbs disappear instead of just 3. Because with 3, it's like you can just dip away in a half second and orbs dissipate, the Discord orb and the Harmony orb as well. So maybe that would help a little bit, but ultimately I don't think it's going to be too impactful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with Zenyatta. A couple last things to mention with weekend trends. We did see Ilios a couple times, and we actually did see Ilios a little bit in the Gosu Gamer weeklies too, like maybe once or twice. This is a map that we saw 0 times, like in competitive events. So I thought that was interesting. Any reasons that you guys saw for the Ilios choices?
I think it was a surprise to me that people were banning it so often. So I mean, look, Huck's a pro gamer. I'm sure he'll be able to back me up on this. But pro gamers just hate variability. They want as much consistency as possible. And you know, with wells and with all the ledges, you know, it just has that potential to be kind of crazy. But I think the map is fun as hell, dude. I don't know. I don't know if I'm like. Maybe everyone will lose a lot of respect for me now, but like that's actually one of my favorite maps to play in the whole game. I really like Ilios, except for maybe the temple or maybe the really long whatever that point is called. I forget, but I like it actually. So I'm not surprised to see it come back.
Yeah, I like it too. It's a fun map. I think it's more of what Ben said, and then on top of that, I think teams just realize when they're playing a certain team that maybe they're really strong on certain maps, so they would rather roll the dice than play a team where they're, you know, maybe certain strong on payloads or other maps.
Yeah, I think like with patches and new things in games, I think generally pros are like super averse to them to start with, right? So if something comes out, a new map, no, not fucking playing it, no, not happening, no, until they've had like a decent amount of time to deal with it. And same thing when things get nerfed, right? Remember when McCree was originally really OP and there was no damage fall off and he get 210 damage headshots across the map, and they nerfed him. No one played him, but he was still broken. He still had a Fan Hammer that was incredibly strong, and then people started to creep in, right? They're a cautious bunch, pro players, but Reunited are happy to play Ilios. They're 2-0 on it so far in competitive play. I think they've brought it out in the Gosu Weekly, and then maybe in the Go for Overwatch on the weekend. Maybe, I'm not sure. They got knocked out in the round of 64, so not 100% sure. But yeah, I think there's just like you start to pick it up, right? Teams like ONOG, for example, who obviously feature Cooler and Cypher and Sharik and a few like Quake Arena guys and stuff like that. They have a proclivity for those kind of style of maps, as the TDM style or the sort of single spatial objective, and they were really good at those for a while. So there's a multitude of reasons, I think.
Oh shit.
Okay, so we just got some news.
Oh
guys.
shit!
We just got some big news. Okay, so we got some big team news here from our co-host Shade, who couldn't make it today, but apparently Esper is leaving Luminosity Gaming, which is huge. I mean, Esper has been the Mercy forever now, and Esper's a great Mercy too. So yeah, this is huge, especially with LG just being on fire lately. Thoughts or initial thoughts, Ben?
Oh, poor guy. This is coming right after all this stupid Twitch chat memes. I really hope it wasn't because of the freaking Twitch chat.
I mean, the poor guy's been getting shit on for really no reason at all. It's just because it's edgy and funny to have a meme about a Mercy that dies all the time. I don't know. It's just a shame. Hopefully it wasn't him leaving and giving up with it, because I think he did post about it in Pro Talk. He said, I don't really mind it too much, like not a big deal, but who knows if it really got to him.
No, I think
go ahead.
It's public perception. It's horrible as a pro player to have people constantly ragging on you. Like, even if you don't think it will matter at the end of the day, it does.
Same as a caster, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you look at Reddit,
we have feelings too.
Yeah. And if you get bad stuff on Reddit, you're immediately like, what the fuck? You feel so bad because you know that, you know, people read that. Pro players read it. Even, you know, pro players probably have a better perspective. It's just, it's never a good thing.
Yeah, gosh. I hope
now I just want to know who's going to replace him. I mean, LG is honestly like,
oh man.
Okay, look, we had really high expectations for the original Classic mix-up. They didn't meet those insanely high expectations at first, but they have been consistently getting better and better and better and better, up into the point where it's no surprise to see them beating really good teams like Reunited and Cloud9. So, this does suck for them because they have been on the right track, at least from my perspective, it feels that way. But, we'll see. Who's it going to be? Who's going to replace them? Now I'm trying to brainstorm. Like, who's a free agent right now that plays support?
Do you think they have someone ready right now, or they're going to explore their options?
I don't know. I'd have to find out from Shade, but I have this feeling it might have been
Mercy
sudden.
players as well. Like there could be quite a few. There are a lot of Mercy players, free agents that are really good.
That's definitely true. I think Mercy might be more replaceable compared to some of the hit scan guys. But still, he was definitely one of the. Oh, they're doing tryouts this week, so.
Oh shit!
But I think Shade gave away stuff all in that announcement as usual, esports talk. But you did say that the team feels that a roster change is necessary. So that to me doesn't make me feel that it was Esper's decision to leave at all, or maybe not majority anyway.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Well, we'll find out soon, I guess.
That's definitely big news. Crazy. That's Overwatch team esports right now. It's you never know. Even teams that win, will shake things up. So, but I just hope it didn't have a lot to do with just all the memeing and stuff like that. That would be very, very unfortunate. Okay, so last point, and I think was Ben. Did you add this oversaturation?
Yeah, I just added it. I added it because we saw Envyus in the grand finals of 3 tournaments in 5 days, and 2 of them were against Cloud9. And right now, Cloud9 and Envyus are like the 2 teams to beat, and we saw them play 3 times in 5 days. So this is always this discussion happens in every esports community. It has to happen at some point, and it really makes sense why it happens every single time. It goes like this: game comes out, viewership's really good. Everyone sees an opportunity for ROI for their sponsors. Everyone hosts tournaments until the ROI starts to normalize. It's just an economic system. And right now, demand and supply are in flux. Like demand is super, super high, but the supply of tournaments and to watch has just exploded. Because it's not just the Ghost of Gamers weeklies every single week and these big tournaments and the Alienware weeklies. And there's a thing in France next week. And there's also the King of the Watch. Like there's basically like a tournament with most of the time with most of the top teams, like every other day. So I'm not saying the sky is falling or anything, but it's just a discussion that I think it's something that we should have at the top of our minds. And it's not like us talking about it's going to convince somebody to not do a tournament. Everyone's trying to get in for a lot of reasons right now, but yeah.
So, I mean, this is something I brought up like a long time ago. I mean, not even that long ago, right, Ben? Is just worrying about oversaturation because of the amount of hype that Overwatch has generated. And we saw this with Hearthstone to a degree too, just when it was going crazy and people, just saw that an event can get 20, 30, 40, 50,000 thousand concurrent viewers at one time, and then everybody just decides to try to do it. It's going to happen, like you said, Ben. But I would say, like, if you're an event organizer and you're wanting to do this, you have a sponsor, and you're trying to basically meet all these needs for sponsors and raise the money, just make sure you do something that's like very unique and special. Because like the last thing we need is like to have the same tournaments over and over and over. That's the only thing I'll say, because like that is when it's like oversaturation at its worst. Whenever you have things like, Home Story Cup, that's kind of different, and then you actually have, just the main, whatever the Blizzard circuit is, and then you'll have like a Dream Hack or something like that. That's better. That's definitely, I'm okay. I feel at least better as a, fan spectator, in terms of just having a lot of events, as long as they're different in some way. But when you start seeing the same cookie cutter events over and over and over, that's when it starts becoming a very bad thing.
I mean, it noted to Navi versus Alliance was El Clasico, and then it just got boring. You saw it twice a month, every single month for like a year and a half, and then suddenly it didn't have meaning anymore. So anyway, Mitch, I interrupted very rudely. Please.
No. I mean, like it's the same. It was the same in CS actually, but we went from online to actual LAN event saturation as well. Players were, but this is a accurate projection of what the future may well look like, right? Where if this happens, I mean, I don't know. I think Blizzard will be more involved than Valve, and they already have been more involved than Valve, so it's not a concern. But okay, like there's a fair few tournaments going on in Europe. It doesn't seem Ooh, doesn't seem that bad at the moment because, okay, we've got these two French tournaments, ROG and Amazon France, right? That's going on, which most people don't even know about except the players because they're only cast in French for whatever reason. We do our thing on the Sunday, our little go for Overwatch tournament. But when you look at it from like the big perspective, and when you realize that a lot of teams are playing in NA and EU tournaments, or mostly EU teams playing across, then it's like, holy crap, especially in the NA scene, there are a lot of tournaments. There's the Soylent, the Milk, the
I can't even keep. I am as hardcore.
You're talking about the beat invite. No,
I can't follow everything.
yeah.
It's impossible. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm doing the show with the lads. Let's have a look at the topic sheet. I'm like, I didn't watch like half of these tournaments over the weekend. So, I mean, just on a personal level, it's hard to keep track of. So for players, they're enjoying this right now. It's exposure, it's practice, it's test conditions for them. But eventually, they're going to get sick of it.
Yeah.
Well, it'll just come to a point where they're just going to start skipping the smaller events. I mean, that's the bottom line. We can talk about it, as Ben said, all we want, but eventually it just gets to a point and you're just like, all right, I went to 2 lands this month and fuck this online tournament. I'd rather just chill, scrim, practice.
And I think the really good thing about this oversaturation problem, I'm using air quotes because it's really not a problem yet, or may never be, is that we're having 124 teams sign up for every Gosu Gamer weekly. So it's just another proving ground for the amateur, up-and-coming, mid-tier competitive teams to get noticed and have prize pools and competition.
Yeah, and I think that's really good because we're still going to have that going into the future, and then that's how it always works, is that the big dogs are just going to be very selective, but if you still want to grind out and take those steps to becoming a pro gamer, it's important to still have those steps. The worst case is that you only have big events and you don't have small events, you don't have online cups, and then it's just very, very stagnated. So I think it's going to meet that balance, but right now, it's rough out there, boys.
Yeah, or at least the events are all in the same pool. Eventually, like you said, they'll start to tier, top tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of thing. In the near future, and then, like you said, it's all dependent upon the teams and how they select to attend tournaments. I thought we were starting to see it, but then all of a sudden it's come back to. I mean, the issue is that a lot of these events recently have large prize pools. Like these are the largest we've seen, right? So we haven't gotten to the point where the standard has been set for consistent prize pools for Overwatch. Once that happens, I think it'll be very obvious what they should attend, or at least the top teams, and what they shouldn't.
Yes.
All right. Last thing that we have here is it's Icarus is meta weekly, right? The tiers. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, Ben? Mm-hmm.
I mean, we basically talked about most of it already. I think probably better to just focus on like the really standout stats here. And I would say, not a surprise to see Mercy and Lucio in the A tier. Again, guys, this is Icarus. He puts together really nice meta recaps each week that summarize the picks and bans, not picks and bans, but hero picks in the competitive tournaments of the week. And no surprise to see Mercy and Lucio really high on the list. But Soldier 76 with basically an 80% pick rate. He was the highest of the B tier picks. Obviously, we talked about Farah, Reinhardt, Mercy, Lucio, Winston, Soldier now as being like the really, really core picks on almost every payload map. Roadhog also jumped hugely. I think he jumped from like D tier to B tier from week to week. But we've been seeing him more and more. But interesting, Tracer, Genji, Widowmaker as the C tier. So Tracer and Genji continuing to be really niche picks, more common on the King of the Hill maps, I think, than anything. Genji still can be an absolute game. Actually, both can be a game changer, especially with their ultimates, but getting less and less picks. And I think one of the things that stands out to me here the most is in the D tier list, we now have Junkrat, who, as Mitch talked about earlier, was basically a staple of every single payload defense, and now has just immediately dropped in favor of 76 and others, and maybe because of Farah picks. And also Symmetra, who has gone up and gone down quite a few times in the meta, but Symmetra really rarely picked now, even on the payload maps where she used to get picked all the time. For me, these are kind of like the standouts. Of course, McCree has continued to plummet in pick rates after the nerf, but not a huge surprise there. The rest, pretty much in line with what we've seen in the past, I believe. unless I'm missing something.
No.
I think the Symmetra's decline has a lot to do with Lucio's raise actually as well. If you see him, obviously you see him now of the overused sort of tier. Because it was always like teams would have a Mercy and a Lucio sometimes on defense on a hybrid map, for example, when teams wanted to defend a bit more aggressively, right? So you'd actually speed boost your team into an attacking team before they were set up. King's Row is a great example, right? Attacking team rocks up, they get sort of behind the statue coming around, and then all of a sudden you hit the go button as a defending team and go in and jump on them. So there was that strategy, or there was the Symmetra Mercy strategy where you'd lay all your turrets up and you'd set it up. And this wouldn't allow you really to go and fight. You had to be reactive and not proactive about teams that were sort of on the defensive side, that is. So that was a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, definitely check out Icarus's it's the meta analysis or recap that he does. It's a video. It's in a video form, so I linked it in the chat, and he does a great job with it. Spends a lot of time on it too. So definitely, it's just good content in the community. Definitely check it out. Upcoming events. So just want to do a quick recap of what's coming up. The Beat Invitational is going to be happening. Actually, it's today at some point. I was talking to ZP. ZP is going to be casting that today, a little bit later. Definitely check that out. It's a $7,500 prize pool tournament. Some of the big teams are in it too. Not all of them, but some of them are definitely there. And let's see what else. The ESL qualifiers. You want to talk a little bit about that, Mitch? That this is the qualifiers for the big tournament, right? And
Gamescom. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Starting to heat up.
Yeah.
This is definitely nice.
So I think the announcement article sort of initially said that it started on the 28th for some reason. Not really sure why that was. I have to pin that down on editorial at this stage. Obviously, it kicks off on the 4th for EU and on the 6th for NA. So basically, it's going to be 4 days a week broadcast anyway from us. So obviously 2 days EU, then 2 days NA. It's very early in the day for NA. Now, this was intentional. Obviously, this is sort of agreed upon time. And for some people, it may be a little bit inconvenient, but we think it's probably the sweet spot in terms of all things considered, I think, time-wise for it. So people may have to take time off work and school and that kind of thing. We'd like to think this is maybe worthwhile taking a little bit of time off for. Just around the corner. It's going to be pretty intense, I think. And the fact that we've got 4 from NA and 4 from EU. You tell me, you try to give me the top 4 from each region, you're going to have problems. It's going to be incredibly competitive. Luckily, it won't be randomly seeded. Like some of the stuff
Please do not randomly seed them.
No. So it will be seeded. I mean, other teams that perhaps aren't in the top 20, I guess, of teams are encouraged to play sort of the Go for Overwatch tournaments as well, because we will try and loosely seed teams that maybe we're not aware of off that. But obviously, there is a pretty set in stone group of teams that you'd say top 8, top 12 or whatever. So those teams won't be randomly seeded. We won't see guys like Creation versus Rogue in the first round or something ridiculous like that. So we'll be pouring over it. There may be some growing pains initially as we sort of work through the format, because obviously we're using the new competitive format for Blizzard. Well, that's the plan anyway. Woo! No, seriously though, I think it's going to be okay. I'm actually really quite upbeat about the whole thing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. It's kind of exciting and see how teams sort of play differently, if at all. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. It's gonna be me, Jason, and D-Man 4 days a week, so there'll be plenty to watch.
Oh hell yeah, dude! I'm looking forward to tuning in, man.
Yeah,
it's gonna be awesome.
4 days a week. All right, good stuff. And lastly, there's an Acer Pro Challenge. It's a European Overwatch tournament that's going to be happening. All the top European teams will be participating. The Rogues, Creation, Reunited, Misfits, Melty, all Anox, Overwatch, and SG1 will all be there. So definitely tune into that. And I guess that's going to be it for at least the events. I did have a little segment I wanted to do. I kind of started last week, which was just one little tidbit of content for maybe some of the casual new players. Since I've had some new players just recently, let me know that they watched the show and stuff. So I figured I'd mention a guide, a mouse sensitivity guide, which Huck, you probably would be good at talking about just how important that is, and how maybe some people don't even understand it. But Pronto Gaming created a video that goes through it pretty well, and especially for new people, understanding just DPI of your mouse and what the settings are like, and how it pertains to Overwatch. So you should definitely check that out.
My settings are fucking horrible, man.
Are they? I'm so lazy because like I should totally have different settings for my Windows than from my Overwatch, but I just like have it. I'm too lazy to set up a different profile.
I've used every sensitivity tool I could find just to try and fine tune it because I'm a dirty McCree main, right? So if I'm not in left clicks, I'm getting really mad. So I find it really interesting though as well because obviously Overwatch uses more of an integer-based system for their sensitivities, and I found that it took me ages to get the scope ratio for Widowmaker right, as opposed to for me obviously having played Counter-Strike Global Offensive before Overwatch as my main shooter. It took me ages to figure out sort of where that sort of married up and stuff because I play with whack settings. I'm super I'm like 1 sense in game, 800 DPI, notch 4, like super low sense. So for me, like it took me ages to sift through. So I think tools like this are really cool because there's not necessarily an intuitive link. I think there's nothing wrong with Blizzard's system that the way that they have. Maybe we could use more than just integer sensitivity notches, but apart from that's fine. But I wanted to try and marry it up as close as I could to what I play with CS because it is so ingrained in me after playing COD 4 for like 5k hours when I was younger as well.
Right. Yeah, so anyways, check that out, guys. I linked it in the chat, and I'll provide the links too on the show page for everybody listening, everybody watching. So we're going to do some Q&A here, maybe take 3 or 4 questions. While I'm figuring out what questions, go ahead and ask them in Twitch chat too. There's a few on Twitter, but you go ahead and ask them in Twitch chat, and maybe Ben, keep an eye on that. While we're doing that, I want to give a shout out to all the folks listening on iTunes and Google Podcasts. Big shout out to Boo Sam Pop for leaving a 5-star review for the show. If you want to help out the show, that's one of the best ways that you can help support the show is by leaving a review and 5-star review and a nice little note. That helps a lot in the rankings. And also, some folks have been having some issues with iTunes and the feed not updating. If that happens, guys, I am updating I am sending out the audio versions like consistently. So if you're not getting them, go ahead and unsub it or delete the podcast and resub to it, and that usually fixes the problem. I'm not sure what's going on with iTunes, so but I've had a few users tweet me about it, and that seems to fix it. So try that next time. Okay, questions. We have a question on Twitter from Pillowkeeper. What's your thoughts on the possible new heroes of Sombra and Doomfist?
Bring them sooner than later.
Yeah, exactly.
Please support.
I was hoping it would be like early summer.
I
was hoping it would be early summer, but it looks like it's going to be late summer.
I think if I know Blizzard and the way that they sort of approach like the creativity and the uniqueness and the mechanics of these heroes, they're going to rip the meta apart. Even just one of them, I think it's going to completely change the way the game is played at all levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you think it's going to rip the meta apart. All right. Well, Sombra, everybody was projecting Sombra to be a sniper healer. Would that wouldn't rip the meta apart. I mean, that might even be used, honestly. So, I mean, it really depends on, I guess, the other aspects of it, or even if that hypothesis is even correct.
But it's such a boiling pot right now as well, and it's so volatile, the meta as well. You see how it changes. Junkrat now is no good because Pharah's good and stuff like that as well. You give it a little poke and you might have it blow up in your face, or you might have a very interesting reaction there as well. So I don't think it takes much actually for one new hero to change the meta, but I'm pretty sure that the mechanics that we're seeing from the heroes that we have now as well, Blizzard are going to see that, and I think it's so hyped, dude. Seriously, I honestly think it's going to change a lot, probably more than most people think it will change.
Mm-hmm. Doomfist, man, I'm hyped about Doomfist. I want to see what they do with that. That ultimate could be amazing. All right, Tuturu Karen asks, was the Widow scope animation nerfed too much? Was it wrong to remove a fun movement mechanic that makes the hero less dynamic? I mean,
she's a sniper. She's not supposed to be dynamic. She's
exactly.
supposed to sit there, shut up, and take shots. I think, you need to be more spatially aware right now, but it means you can't do stupid MLG 720 bangarang stuff that you probably really shouldn't be able to.
Yeah, and the worry there was, oh man, we've seen all of these epic plays from Reaver, from Zoms, from these amazing hitscan players. They're really fun to watch in first person. ZP's going to scream like a maniac every time it happens, but we also still saw that. Gods was still able to do that this last weekend several times. So she still has the ability to go ham. You just have to commit a little bit more. So I don't play Widow myself, so I'm not the best to answer, but I'm at least glad that we're still seeing these Widow streaks. It didn't actually totally kill her ability to do that and go completely ham and change the whole game. So
Yeah, I agree. Huck, any thoughts on the Widow change? Too much? No? All right. Let's see. Killa Joel, do you guys feel the game will need to upgrade their netcode at some point to stay successful, or is it fine how it currently is? Oh. All right.
I have some input.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Ben.
I went like this because I remembered that we hadn't covered this yet. We didn't put it in the script. And it was something that I wanted to bring up, is that people used the high bandwidth servers this weekend for ONOG.
Right.
It wasn't forced. It was actually just if both teams wanted to play with it, they could. But I'm very happy to say that from what I've heard and I've asked around a little bit, it looks like the high bandwidth servers are working as they should, as intended. They're not crashing like they were in previous patches. They're working, and apparently they feel great. So high bandwidth servers are in the game today. People are using them. They're totally working. And if that's the case, I don't see why we don't just use it from now on in perpetuity.
We were using it at the Josh OG tournament too. Same thing. They were great. So
yeah.
Boom.
I think as long as it's not none of those bugs that we saw before, and it's definitely a little bit harder to actually pull people in the 60 hertz servers than it is on a 20 hertz server. So you definitely use it. There's no reason not to, and hopefully we'll see it just on the standard servers eventually. Okay, there's one actually addressed to you, Fishstix. Is this Jose Ramirez? What's this one about? Let's see. It says, Fishstix, there have been a couple of Reddit threads discussing the impact of stopwatch to meta, meaning that it could limit the possible team composition strategies in favor of the quicker ones for attack, and obviously the more tank-heavy delay tactics on the defense. Do you agree? What are your thoughts? What do you see as being the best possible rule set?
We
talked about this.
Kind of touched on. Yeah, we've touched on this in previous episodes, like briefly. I don't really buy the argument that gameplay that forces that all depends on speed really changes how you're going to approach the game too much. I mean, obviously there are cases at the very end of maps where you can pick a million tracers. Obviously, though, with one hero limit, that's a non-factor. So I don't really buy the argument that it's going to change the heroes that you pick very much at all. Only in some very limited cases do I think this really impacts the way you play and the heroes you choose greatly. Further, with the time bank rule set that Blizzard has proposed, it's about going fast again anyway. So I don't think that this is really an issue in my opinion. I know Blizzard themselves have said that they don't like the fact that that stopwatch encourages compositions that go fast over everything else. They have said that publicly, if I remember correctly. But the rule sets that they're proposing now are also based on time. So I don't know. I'm just a fan of stopwatch in general, and I don't think that it really impacts how entertaining the games are, or how fun the games are, or even really how they're played very much in the end. But I don't know if the other hosts think about it differently or not.
What are your thoughts on just different formats, Huck? Like we've talked about it ad nauseum, like actually just different things that we've just ideas or whatnot that aren't stopwatch. But anything that you've had or maybe thinking of that might actually be a decent thing to try?
I think the biggest problem with a lot of esports, especially going into the future, we see it on many issues, is just it being boring. I'm a guy that coming from a pro standpoint, I want to see the best gameplay possible, but what's more important, I think, for most of the casual players / viewers of the esport is that things are new and fresh. So the more dynamic and the more varied those things are, I think the better it is. So I would love to see different kinds of game modes and new maps, and that constantly to be refreshed, even if it is a little game breaking at times.
Mm-hmm. And you'd like that to be part of the, let's just say there is a league, right? Like just the Blizzard Overwatch League or whatever it is. You would want it to be part of the regular thing, or would you want it to be just specific to, just a uniqueness of an event? Having it be this kind of crazy format, and then this event has a different one, and that sort of thing. I
think at the highest level, if there's a huge league, they need to go off what's most fair. So I would like to see it a little bit more restricted, but I think Overwatch will be at a big enough point where we can have one-off events that basically maybe focus on something that's unique. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be more on the tournament organizers to if you don't have as much money or if you can't compete with these other,
Right.
obviously if there is a big league, as you said, then I'm sure it's going to dominate the market to a certain extent. And that's where, as another event, you got to kind of pick your battles, and that might be a unique standpoint you could use.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for the questions this week. So thanks to everybody for writing those in and participating in the show with us. But why don't we wrap up the show? Huck, amazing having you on, buddy. It's this is the first Overwatch show I've had you on, so it was a lot of fun. Any shout-outs you want to do?
Yeah, man. Shout out to you guys for having me on, and chat for being here. And sorry, I don't know what the hell happened with my mic.
It's crazy.
It's a new thing for me because I stream on a dual PC setup. So having to redo everything was a pain in the butt. It seemed fine, but apologies again. And yeah, man, let's just fucking battle on to the future. I'm looking forward to everything Overwatch. So let's go, boys. Let's go.
Yeah. Mitch, always a pleasure having you on too. You're almost like an extended family of this show already. So I always consider you a host. Exactly. Want to do any shout-outs?
Yeah, shouts to you guys. Always a pleasure to come and chat about the real issues, It's good fun, as always. Shout out to Jason Kaplan as well, who's a bit busy tonight and couldn't be on for the bands. Shout out to Lee D-Man Smith, as he's about to have the nastiest 4 weeks of his life, casting more Overwatch than he knows what to do with. Shout outs to you guys. Shout outs to my subs as well. I have like 5 subs, so who tuned in tonight as well, which is really good. Shout outs to my mates at ESL as well, especially those who are the big wigs who are in charge of the Overwatch Gamescom stuff, who let guys like me and Jason have input into how it all works, and as well to Blizzard as well, because a lot of their guidance has been really interesting, and their insights and stuff really help us in our direction alongside them as well. So thanks.
Fishstix, how about you, buddy? It's good to have you back, man.
Yeah, awesome show. Glad to be back. I'm going on vacation next week, but I think I'm going to bring my laptop and just play Overwatch. Yeah. So I might be here next week. I'm not quite sure yet. Great show. Tons of fun. Lots of good stuff to talk about. Really looking forward to seeing the ESL Atlantic Showdown qualifiers and that tournament unfold. Because, guys, this is the first time that Blizzard is actually officially supporting the tournaments and endorsing the tournaments, which may not sound like a huge deal to everybody, but because we've had so many tournaments and we've had significant prize pools and all that, but I think it's a massive deal. This is going to be the first true Overwatch extravaganza, and it starts with a ton of qualifiers, so definitely looking forward to watching those qualifiers unfold over the next couple of weeks. Other than that, make sure to subscribe to the competitive Overwatch subreddit. Yes. It's still growing. It's actually still growing pretty quickly.
I didn't look at the number. I was on it. I just never looked at the number, though.
I always just look at the number of concurrent people on the subreddit, and right now there's 1,000. So that actually is growing like crazy.
Yeah.
Might be because of the patch. I don't know.
28K. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's a great place. People post about all the upcoming tournaments. They post about tournament results. They post videos about meta. Discussions about meta. There's the Luminosity Gaming removes Esper post right there. So if you're interested in the competitive scene, which if you've made it this far into the show, I'm pretty sure you are,
yes.
Go give it a subscribe.
I just linked it too for you guys to check it out. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys for doing the show with me, the 3 of you guys. It's always a lot of fun. Tuesdays are always a good day because of the overview. Big shout out to I guess our co-hosts that are on here too, just Jason and Shade. They're busy with a few things, unfortunately, today. Hopefully I think Shade will be back. Jason, I think, is going to be with you, Rich, doing the just the qualifiers, right, all week long. So
a bit tied up for a month or so.
Yeah, a bit tied up for a month. So we won't see these guys for a little bit, but we'll still have a show. So definitely tune in for that. VODs will be up on youtube.com/ChanManV. Be sure to check that out if you missed the beginning of it, as well as the audios will be up tomorrow too. Just be sure to, again, subscribe to it on iTunes and Google Podcasts and all the other different aggregator apps that you might use for podcasts like Stitcher and Pocket Cast and all that good stuff. You can find the overview there you can either search for Overwatch or probably the best thing is to search for Overwatch and then find it. That's generally the best way to help with SEO. But that's going to be it, guys, for the overview. So for Huck, Mitch, Leslie, Fishstix, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next week. Later.
You in competitive.
Oh, yeah, play competitive, guys, this week. So we can talk about it a bunch next week.